Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my Power Ranking series. For my number 13 team, we're going to be looking at the New England Patriots. Okay, so there is some late round rookies that I do have interest in, but I'm going to hold off listing them for now. Just kind of know that they are here for depth purposes. You'll see them on the O line. They might be productive. The Patriots are very good at finding guys like that, so I'll leave them off for now, but just do note they're here. Uh, so interesting stuff here for the offensive line. Isaiah Wynn, Michael Onwenu, David Andrews, Trent Brown. Like these are all guys we know who can play. No issues there. Cole Strange was really the interesting first round pick here. Older player coming out of Tennessee, Chattanooga. I did not have him that high. I think most people didn't have him that high. There's actually a clip even of the Rams expecting him to be kind of in the third, thinking they could get him there. That's kind of roughly where I had him. He's an all-time great athlete. Don't get me wrong there. He plays tough nose, but there's some stuff to clean up. He's not a perfect prospect or what I deem a first round prospect typically. Uh, Thankfully though, he came to a spot that's very good at developing these types of players. We saw them do it with Onwenu just recently. So, I mean, if they can do it with Michael there, I expect Cole Strange will not have a problem, sliding in and getting ready. This is not an area the Patriots struggle in developing. So this O line is looking very favorable for a Mac Jones. Coming off a pretty decent season one. I mean, it's exactly what I was expecting of him. I expected he was probably going to be the most productive early on, probably for the first couple years. I mean, he was probably the most ready of those prospects. To be fair to at least Trevor, though, who went first. I mean, Trevor kind of got saddled with a rough situation in Jacksonville. But nonetheless, I liked a lot of what Mac Jones was doing. I liked a lot of how he could stand in the pocket and really just read a defense. I thought his processor was pretty good, post and pre-snap. He definitely learned a lot playing at Alabama. If you looked at him currently, he's actually slimmed down and put on some muscle, which has its benefits and takebacks. He is saying he's probably going to bulk up a little bit more before getting to the season. That does often help quarterbacks take some shots. Uh, but he's definitely gotten into more of the physicality of the team and of being an NFL player, which is good to see. I love the mentality he has. There's tons of reports last year, of his girl reading him plays, and he'd actually have to go through and explain it all out. So he was very quick to learn the playbook and learn how the NFL works, and he clearly cares. I think the Patriots did well, and they kind of fell right into their laps. Good on them. Okay, tons of stuff here. Where do I even begin? Okay. Let's start with the running backs. There is a plethora of running backs here, and the Patriots do well to use the ball. Harris is definitely the lead back here. I like what he does a lot. Very hard-nosed runner. He carries that run style almost similar to Chris Carson. If you kind of emulate that, although Chris may not be making it to next year, which is kind of unfortunate, but Harris will hopefully carry on their legacy. Uh, Stevenson's also a super interesting player here in the back, a very another tough nose runner trained by DeMarco Murray. You can kind of see some of Murray's influences in the way he breaks tackles and the way he runs into contact. Not overly insane athlete, but the power is definitely there. The most interesting athlete here is definitely Pierre Strong Jr. Myself, as well as a couple of analysts, were super intrigued by him. Just not only on the athletics that you were able to see on the testing numbers, but if you were to watch him, he plays super shifty, like unnaturally shifty. It's almost Shady McCoy level of shifty with his the way he can kind of juke and get in these blind spots of these even the linebackers. I mean, the poor linebackers that had to deal with him. He'd make one move, cross over their legs, and he was gone. So getting him here is a super nice compliment to the first two guys I just listed. When you would need a change of pace, and then of course you have your traditional third down back, in James White. He's just kind of here. He still does the same thing. He'll still be productive. I imagine he'll have a game or two this season where he goes off. That's just kind of how that works. Receiver wise, they haven't changed too much, but there's been two big guys of note. Kendrick Bourne here, I think, has been super solid. Same thing with Jacoby Myers. They've been really good in the roles they've been asked to play. I have zero issues with them. I think they're productive and good pieces to have. Nelson Aguilar hasn't done overly much. They were really hoping that he was going to be the guy that like really stretches the field and gets them that deep that deep asset. He kind of hasn't done that. He's on his last year though. But they have gotten Thornton from Baylor, who does really exemplify that idea. Super fast, super lengthy. He does have some of that quickness in his feet. It's a little stiff in the hips, but not something that I think can't be modified if he really works with his coaching staff hard enough. There's some good stuff there, and he's clearly supposed to be the successor to Aguilar here. They did do an interdivision trade. They had to pay heavy for it, but I think it was worth it. Getting Parker to be their number one is not a bad idea. You need someone to kind of take the X role, while Bourne's probably going to take Y. You have Myers take the Z. It's really just something they were really lacking last year. They really didn't have an answer for an X receiver. They were kind of trying to do it by committee, which is fine, but you still need someone who fits that mold. Thankfully, Parker can fit that mold. Tight ends are super interesting here. Hunter Henry, I think we all kind of knew this was going to be a slam dunk for them. He just exemplifies everything the Patriots really like in a tight end. Super good blocker. He does like to bowl through guys after the catch. Uh, I mean, there's nothing that Hunter Henry can't do that. I mean, it's almost emulating Rob Gronkowski. Not quite the same height, not quite the same size. Gronk was really, in his prime, was really an exceptional player. There's really not too many guys who could even fit the mold that Gronk is, but they were able to get something like it in Hunter Henry, and he's really establishing himself as a really good and top tight end. He'll be there, probably back in that conversation sooner rather than later, in my opinion. The one that they were super eager to sign that they haven't utilized overly well, in my opinion, is Jonnu Smith, which I'll be interested to see if they figure that out. If they cannot figure it out after this year, I'd look for Jonnu to be traded. In all honesty, uh, the move made sense at the time. They run a lot of these two tight end sets, heavy packages, especially with the receivers they had, and they just really struggled to get Jonnu to do much. They just kind of didn't know where to get him. So with whatever happens here in the offensive coordinator position, I hope they do figure it out as to what they're going to be doing and who they're going to be doing it with. All right, defensive front seven. This is where really Bill Belichick and his influence really starts to shine. You got guys like Lawrence Guy, Dietrich Wise, Henry Anderson. They're all super stout run defenders. They don't add too much pass rush wise. Wise is the pass rush wise. Wise is really the best of the interior pass rush, besides when you get to the nose tackles, because he kind of can play that D end role as well, similar to Ogba. But they're just kind of solid players at this point. I mean, a lot of them are starting to get up there in age and ability, but I think they fit with what Bill likes to do. The most interesting point here is you have Gotcha, who's kind of the more traditional nose tackle. But getting Barmore, I was super high on Barmore. I had a first round grade on Barmore. He is not your traditional build. He is super light in the feet, but that doesn't mean that he is light overall. He does not move off the ball when they try to get him to. He is super stout in that aspect. Uh, but when it comes to pass rush, is really where Barmore thrives. When you get him in a one-on-one, he often can beat on some of these centers, especially in the new league where a lot of these guys are getting lighter, right? Where they often just use their athletics to get to the outside or get to the angle. Well, when you try to do that against a guy like Barmore, who has the lighter feet and does have the upper body strength, that's where you see some of these centers start to struggle because you can't really beat him to a point, and even if you do, he can still outmuscle you and catch up to you. So that was a super great pick by the Patriots. I think that filled a need, and he does make running and passing the ball a lot more difficult for a lot of these new modern offenses. Linebacker wise, there wasn't too much to talk about here. It's kind of just a bunch of shots in the dark. The most interesting one is Juwan Bentley. They did trade for Marco Wilson. Could be something here. They seem super high on him, so we'll kind of wait and see. Uh, but they play their roles well. They're kind of just they fit what Bill Belichick likes to do. I don't expect they'll be overly high end players, but I bet they'll do their role. They'll sit kind of in that average to below average starter caliber level players. Judon, super good last year. And I don't expect that's going to change much. I think Bill Belichick really loves having a guy like Judon as the just prototypical edge rusher, and he can move him around to whatever edge side he wants. And Judon does really well with that. He plays with power. He does very well at understanding where his feet need to be when doing a rush. He doesn't seem to like he doesn't need to overly engage. So when he does his little kick slide outside, he will happily hesitate and leave a wide base to make that tackle try to engage before doing something like a rip or a swim move. So having a guy like that versatile and that patient as well to get his money, super effective. Now for the backups here, there's a couple other guys as well that could be of interest, but the ones I'm most interested in would be Josh Uche and Ronnie Perkins. Ronnie Perkins, to me, I saw as someone who emulated a lot of what Bud Dupree did very well. So do not be surprised if you see when Judon needs to come out, you see Perkins start to take that role now a lot more, and you'll see him play almost very similarly. Just someone to keep in mind on. I thought there was a lot of traits there that reminded me of Dupree. I'll be curious to see when he finally gets his chance. He was really buried here last year, and he's kind of buried again. But we'll see how they perform. Especially now that Van Noy's gone, that could help. Uche again, he fits that hybrid mold to a T. They also have Anthony Jennings, but I think Uche is the more interesting athlete and the better pass rusher when they do want to blitz Uche or want to have him rush. So there's a lot of answers here that Bill Belichick can use to really combat any offense, and it's partially that mind, especially with what he has, can really make these rookie quarterbacks struggle. Bill Belichick has something like an insane, it's like a 38-point spread when facing a rookie like that. He always wins by something like that. It's ridiculous, but it's stuff like that, right? He has always these weird pieces on defense in combination with his super creative mind that make it really difficult for even veteran quarterbacks to deal with, but rookies especially. Defensive backs, not what anyone here I'm willing to give a star anymore. I mean, Devin McCourty, still a very good safety, but he's coming down. That age is slowing him down definitely. Peppers here is very interesting. I like the idea of what Bill could do with Peppers. I'm very fascinated to see what he can do. You might see Peppers used a lot more like how he was in college, where he'd come down almost as a linebacker. So do keep in mind on that. That's super intriguing to me, especially when you have guys like Adrian Phillips and Kyle Duggar who also can do that, or also switch to two high, or also switch to nickel. Like there's a ton of safety options here for the Patriots, and they are not lacking in it. I think that's super interesting to see. I like it's even more than what I thought the Giants had. I think they had a lot of safeties and D backs where they allowed them to do a lot of hybrid or disguised looks. Now seeing a lot of these guys here with Bill Belichick in almost the same kind of situation, there could be some interesting stuff here that Bill does with these guys. Malcolm Butler is back here with the Patriots. He'll be, I think, okay. I think he'll be productive. He's definitely probably more comfortable here than when he was with Arizona briefly. So there is that. I don't expect anything overly high, though. He's coming to the tail end of his career. Maybe he can surprise me. Jonathan Jones, very productive slot corner. We'll see how that goes. A lot of these slot corners are starting to demand money, especially with their contracts coming up. Look at Kenny Moore. So we'll see what goes on with Jonathan Jones, but I think keeping him here for that slot role is definitely not an issue. The other corner side is really where things kind of get even more rough. Jalen Mills and Terrence Mitchell. It's a lot of these guys are kind of just fill-in guys. They can give you some quality snaps, but you really don't want them taking the vast majority. We'll see how Bill protects them schematically. Maybe that's what he uses these safeties a lot for, is to help protect their coverage a lot more. He leans the defense more that way. We'll see how they do, but that is definitely. I mean, there's a lot of glaring weaknesses that we've seen occur on this defensive side of the ball that has really forced Bill to be more creative with how he does defense than in some moments in the past. As you can see, I do have Bill. I've mentioned him multiple times. He's kind of the overarching, uh, you know, idea of this entire team. Got him eating his Subway sandwich that he loves. I should have drawn Nike in there somewhere, his dog. But Bill's a great defensive mind. He very clearly has not only understood the game well when he got in, but he's adapted to the game very well. So I give him full credit for that. I mean, I don't even know when he's going to retire. He seems like he's not slowing down at all. So he's a big up for this team. He's a big reason why this team can rank so high. Special teams, I don't think there'll be any issues. Defensive coordinators being a combination between his son and Gerard Mayo, I think that's very good. I like both of them. I like what both have done defensively, or through the coaching, not just Mayo's play time. I like that a lot. I think that'll help Bill as well, where he can kind of take more of the head coach role and he can let those guys, handle a few plays in a row. The biggest question here really is offensive coordinator. It's they refuse to announce someone. I'm assuming it's going to be like Joe Judge or something like that. We'll see, but not having an offensive coordinator picked out is interesting, since that's usually not information that's hidden. If I'm entirely honest, it's not supposed to be hidden. That's pretty obvious to everyone else, who their coordinators are. So we'll see how that plays out. The special teamers themselves, I mean, Nick Folk and Bailey, they're fine. I mean, Folk has kind of turned his career around. He's had some rough games in the past, especially with the Bucks. There was some bad times there, but he's turned it around. He's been a little more productive with the Patriots, and Bailey's been a fine punter. I don't think they'll sell a game, so to speak. So Patriots are an incredibly solid team with a very mentally sharp Hall of Fame, head coach. He really is what raises them a lot. Uh, this team, I think, if the Dolphins and Jets do have the low end of what could happen to them, if both those teams crumble in the worst ways possible, this team can very easily still be the second best team. Uh, if they get a good enough, if they meet certain teams in certain conditions or at certain times, I think this team can squeak into the playoffs. But the AFC's gotten so much tougher this year. The team is lacking explosiveness on offense. The secondary has gotten significantly weaker. The linebacker position isn't overly sharp or deep, with really good quality players. There's weaknesses on this team still, and Bill's lacking some of the high-end talent that he's had in previous years. So we'll see how he responds to that. I still think they can win probably more games than they'll lose, but I think it could be tight depending on how injuries happen and again when they meet certain teams in what point of the year in what condition. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you all next time. Later.